Hello, my babies. Welcome to Titular Characters. In this 59th issue, we're featuring Dani Hedlund. After the publication of her first novel at the age of 18, she founded the international literary nonprofit Brink Literacy Project, formerly Tethered by Letters. Over the course of the last decade, Brink has grown into one of the largest independently funded literary nonprofits in the nation, with bases across the US, UK, and Southeast Asia. She's also the founder and editor-in-chief of Friction, an art and literary collection specializing in boundary-defying work. Since its inception in 2015, Friction has risen to critical acclaim, becoming one of the fastest-growing literary journals in the world. In her ever-elusive free time, Dani lectures about the ins and outs of the publishing industry, writing very weird fiction, and runs a strange little board game company called Bad Hipster Games. And today, we're going to talk to her about her latest project, The Literary Tarot, currently on Kickstarter. This is going to be fun. Dani, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So I understand you've got this unbelievably exciting Kickstarter going on right now.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, we are obviously in the middle of it, so I feel like it's a balance of sleep deprivation and excitement.
And I also understand you are the founder and CEO of the Brink Lit Project. What was the genesis of that organization?
Yeah, of course. It's kind of silly to think back that far because I've been running this nonprofit since I was a teenager. But essentially, I grew up in a tiny little farm town. And the only thing this town was better at producing than alfalfa was teenage pregnancies and meth addictions. And it seemed like that would be my sort of path as well. But I was really, really lucky because in that tiny town, there was also a small town library. And in it, I found these portals to so many other magical worlds. And not only did it give me the base, like, boring literacy skills to get a nice scholarship to uni, but it also really changed the way that I thought about myself. And so when I had gotten away from that town and I was, hanging out under the dreaming spires of Oxford, I wasn't so taken with the accomplishment, but really how close I could have come to giving up if I hadn't have had that access. So as a doe-eyed 19-year-old, I was like, well, hell, I want to help other people in this situation. I'm going to start this storytelling nonprofit, and we're going to give books to people who are underprivileged. And then we're also going to help all these new writers and creatives get their voices out there. Of course, I really didn't know what any of that meant. And I've spent the last, 14 years attempting to get it right. But it's been an odd, kind of beautiful, really amazing sort of journey.
It's just such an amazing thing to dedicate so much time to,
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure my mom wishes I would have used my, quantum mechanics degree to do something that made more money. But I think they're slowly adapting.
That's cool. So what do you do as the CEO of the Brink Lit Project?
Oh, goodness. It's such a weird job because we're such a weird organization. We are mostly volunteer run. So there's over 50 of us, where most of the teachers and editors and, marketing gurus volunteer their time. And then I have a very small paid staff that manages that big group. So I have honestly the world's best COO. Her name is Helen Maimaris, and she is the love of my professional life. And we kind of form a dual body together. I'm like the stupid creative idea person, and she runs every other part of the body. So I will, show up to work and be like, guys, new idea, literary tarot for us to fundraise. And then Helen will be like, all right, I guess this is the system that would work, but I wish you'd just do your normal job. So it's a really fun mix of being able to work on the storytelling side and create new projects. I also do really fun stuff where I get to teach in max security prisons. And then I do, the day-to-day, like running the board and making sure the money's being used correctly, and then like fighting with politicians about prison reform. So all in all, it's pretty much the weirdest job anyone could imagine.
But it sounds like so much fun, just in general.
Yeah, I love it. It keeps me on my toes. I have one of those terrible personalities where when I get bored, I get destructive. So I've never been bored, and that's really good for everyone who's ever loved me.
I'm the same way. Don't feel bad. So regarding the tarot project, what struck me about that one was just the amount of names of people that I have heard of on this thing. I mean, it's like some of the greatest writers and artists just anywhere creating stuff that is just really fun and really exciting.
Oh, thanks so much. Honestly, when we conceptualized it only about 6 months ago, I had hopes that we'd get some good celebrity kind of attention, but I didn't think we'd select all 78 of the cards to be paired with some of the biggest hitters in literature and comics. So I keep having this really surreal moment where I open up the spreadsheet and I'm like, man, that can't be right, but it is.
So what was it like working with just these incredible, talented artists and writers?
Oh, it was amazing. I mean, on the author side, all of the authors who paired cards are donating their time. And the really great thing about that is I think that anyone who works in this industry knows that there's a lot of really big personalities and a lot of big ego. And that can make working in publishing really, really painful. But because the authors who came in excited about the nonprofit and excited to donate their time, it created this really incredible filter where everyone is incredibly lovely. So I think on the surface, someone would be like, oh, balancing 78 of the biggest storytellers in the world, that sounds like it's going to be a terrible headache, has actually just been an incredible joy. And on the arts team, I have 5 artists. I'm the art director as well as, running the project and doing everything because it's crazy. But my artists are incredible and they're so encouraging, and they're at these incredibly different stages in their lives, from really seasoned professionals to one of my artists. This is her first professional gig ever. And it's an honor to be able to help them bring these cards to life. I can't say better things about the entire team.
And it's a really diverse looking deck.
Oh, thanks. I'm interested because when we set up the team, I really wanted to make sure that essentially all of the artists' styles really complemented each other. I think as comic readers, I always think of those issues where a guest artist comes in, and no matter how good the art is, like, we're all just pissed off. We're like, no, that's not what our characters look like. This isn't how I'm used to seeing these scenes. So I really wanted to make sure all the artists really brought out something in each other. But the thing that really fascinates me is how different the art can be from the same artist. So you look at Sam Doe, who did the art for Major Arcana. She did my Alice in Wonderland card, and it's just like this cute, like really magical, really just like adorable kind of feminine piece of Alice stumbling down this surreal staircase from the rabbit hole. And then she did Victor LaValle's Tower card, which pairs Lovecraft's The Outsider with this really iconic card. And it is so creepy. Like, you just see this grotesque monster coming in through the window with this tower being struck by lightning in the background. And everyone at that party is about to be devoured. But it's just so different with the same color palette and the same artist. And that's so fun for me.
Why do a tarot card project with this group of people?
That's a great question. It's a really weird project, and we've never done anything like it. Essentially, the origin story of it is pretty much the origin story of everything we've all done for the last year, including you starting this podcast. Was like, wow, COVID, this sucks. How are we going to survive this? So in the pre-COVID times, our nonprofit was primarily funded by a combination of like in-person fundraising events, and also our literary journal, Friction, was a really good seller at Barnes & Noble. But then bookstores closed, and then Barnes & Noble decided to just stop newsstands indefinitely. So suddenly about 70% of our earned income just died. And at the same time, of course, foundational funding for nonprofits, if it was earmarked for education or literature, immediately got diverted for medical. So we were looking around at all the programs we run and at our staff and being like, man, is this the beginning of the end? Will we not be able to weather this? And then my partner, of all people, got this random idea over dinner. But he'd be like, hey, Dani, like tarot cards are selling really well on Kickstarter. Like our friend Seven had just run a really great campaign. And he was like, why don't you just do a tarot deck? Like you love storytelling, you're an art director, you have a great team. Like just do a literary tarot deck. And I just remember my immediately feeling was just being so pissed off because the idea was so good. And I was just so angry I didn't think of it. And that pretty much consumed the next 6 months of my life and will continue to consume it for the next 6 months.
Was coordinating shipping and fulfillment and printing, was that especially challenging here?
Actually, our literary journal Friction is distributed globally. It's one of the fastest literary journals in the world, which is like, it sounds really impressive, but like who reads literary journals? So just a few thousand will be like, oh yeah, you guys are huge.
I read literary journals.
Oh, thanks. So we have a system set up. I'm going to say impressive things like our US and UK fulfillment centers, but I mean my garage and Helen's closet. So we've always been able to handle international sort of fulfillment. But to be fair, we didn't think this project would be near as popular as it is. So if we get closer to something like, 10, 15,000 units, probably something we can't do from our closets. So we're definitely going to adapt that because there's just not enough pints of beer for us to survive that without killing our loved ones.
You are so funny. Okay, so I think one of the most interesting things about this particular Kickstarter is you got this amazing talent. You put together this incredible product, and you put it up, and it's funded in 12 hours. What was that like?
Honestly, it was crazy. We hit the funding goal of 80,000, which was our break-even point. It was in 4 or 5 hours. And it was 4 or 5 hours of us just being like, it was shocking. The support on social, all of my literary heroes coming out and being like, saying how honored they were to be a part of the project and sharing the process. And it was so surreal, especially because we come from book publishing. And book publishing is dying. So, if we run a Kickstarter campaign for an issue of Friction and we break 30,000, like we feel really good about ourselves. So the fact that we were, breaking into 6 figures on the first day was just, it was really surreal. It was just Helen and I slacking each other all day being like, can you believe this is happening? Is this happening? Helen, am I having a seizure? Is this happening?
So where did all the support come from?
Honestly, it came from a lot of different places. Luckily, the good thing, you guys will be unsurprised, about having 78 of the biggest names in storytelling come onto the project is they did a really great job of motivating their followers. So we just saw a lot of people, Margaret Atwood, Lev Grossman, Roxane Gay puts out a tweet, and I can just see a flood of people coming out to support. And I think that's not only because I think the product's super pretty and super cool, but also it's nice that you're getting something that's really, really unique and that the money's going to do something that's great for the world. And I think that kind of knocks down some selling reticence. But on top of that, our friend Seven, who ran the really great tarot campaign that made us start thinking about this, just the month before ran the single most successful tarot campaign that Kickstarter had ever had. So nearly 20,000 backers, which is huge for tarot. And they were one of our volunteer tarot advisors. We had to have a whole team help us put this together. And they were amazing. They just put out a couple posts and I could just see 1,000 people instantly sign up. So we had a lot of allies and we did a lot of press, and it was a really amazing look at hundreds of people come together and then really, really want something to succeed. And I've never experienced something like it. And it's been really magical.
I bet it's a really, really just fabulous and incredible project. So, if you don't mind me asking, your Twitter bio says that you're a lover of Legos. I think that's neat.
Oh, I actually, just in case this interview was in person, I had a big old stack of Legos and I was like, that's unprofessional. I should move them. So I moved them. I just never stopped being a 14-year-old, 12-year-old geek. Like it's sad. Like my partner and I don't want to have kids. So we just buy toys for ourselves. Like a typical, like we've had a really rough week is like, we'll both get new Lego sets. And then like I'll open a bottle of wine and then we'll just assemble Legos and talk about our day, which is silly. But I love it. I think it's a great way to kind of use your brain without actually using your brain. And I know this is silly, but I feel like Legos remind me that humanity is beautiful. Like every single time I see someone put a really clever set together or the attention to detail, like I come from a math background. So I love being able to see the engineering side. And for everyone who's a creative, especially if you're a writer, like we spend so much time just pouring hopes and dreams and thoughts and insecurities onto a blank page. And we never really get to see the physical thing we make until it's actually a book. And so the ability just to make something and then see it come into fruition just feels, I mean, I know I'm going to say magical like 55 times in this interview, but it's magical.
So you've been doing all kinds of creative collaborations for a long time now. What are the ingredients that make your collaborations really work?
That is a really great question. In every project we've run, from this current literary tarot to an issue of Friction to a successful program in a max security prison, it's got to be a combination of a really great passion for storytelling, but it also has to be a willingness to do things differently. I think in publishing, we fall into old trends, and some of those trends can be really negative. Those trends led to, how very few marginalized voices we've had in publishing the last 50 years. So it takes a really big sort of dedication to shake things up. And sometimes that's hard for me because I am like a 90-year-old man or a 14-year-old boy in my heart, which is a really weird position. I'm either playing with Legos or I'm like, I don't know if I can change this budget report. So I think you really got to kind of knock those down and be willing to do something new and interesting. So I think that's been a big success for us. With Friction, one of the things that makes us really different and has led to a lot of our growth is most literary journals don't publish genre. They obviously don't have artwork because it's super expensive. They never publish short comics because comics are one of the largest expenses my entire nonprofit weighs. But at the end of the day, if you want to make storytelling great, it has to have that sort of enchantment as when we were young. You should hold a book in your hand and feel that it is something special, that it glimmers in the sunshine, that it's opened up to an explosion of color. And it takes that kind of thinking to make something successful. So when you look at something like the Literary Tarot, there was an easy way for us to do it. We could have sat down with a couple pints and my editorial team, and we could have made every single pairing. And then I could have gotten one artist to do it. We could have done a super limited palette, and I could have gotten the thing done in a couple months. But that's silly. Like, it's silly for us to be like Googling, like, how does the myth of King Arthur, like, what are the themes in it? When I could just go to Lev Grossman, a man who has spent a decade studying King Arthur, and be like, Lev, talk to me about the important themes here. So we often do the hard thing. And I think that makes a creative project work better.
Nice. Does the process, or rather does the creative process change from medium to medium, like when you're working in comics versus books versus tarot cards?
I think at the end of the day, storytelling follows the same rules. the big rules, character arc, actually having change, making sure you're jumping into a story in the most exciting point. All of those things never change, no matter what I'm editing or writing or publishing. And I think the same thing applied to the tarot deck. Like, we really wanted to make sure we brought out the most dramatic, biggest changes in the characters. And we also wanted to kind of write about the things that hurt. And so we always pushed all of our celebrity authors to be like, okay, what's a book that you love that you really connect with? Why does it matter to you? Like, let's get into the dark, deep stuff. And sometimes the dark, deep stuff is really happy stuff. Like Damien Barr, who's a really amazing writer out of the UK, who paired Tom Sawyer. Like, that was one of the softest, most beautiful memories of him growing up. But he was also like, I identified with Tom not just because of the nostalgia and the idea of the kind of optimism of youth, but also because I saw those negative traits in myself, the mischief, the selfishness. And because he was so open with his pairing about really getting into something that he identified with, that card is beautiful. And I talk about Lev in King Arthur. He didn't go for the easy win on it. Like, you look at King Arthur and it seems like he should be paired with something like the Emperor. It should be like a card about masculinity and power. But when Lev really dug into his heart about why he loves that myth, he loves it because Camelot ends. It's not so much a story of triumph, it's a story of failure. And despite that inevitable failure, they all still fought so hard for it. And that's what makes it beautiful for him. And all of our authors were really brave like that. Like, not only did they kind of expose works that really changed who they were, they dug into why. And I think that sort of bravery is how really good stories are told, no matter the form.
You know, I think you are probably, just in terms of the number of things you've managed to do in your career, you're probably one of the most accomplished people we've ever spoken to. You've got a quantum physics degree. You've produced...
Well, I'm going to tell my mom that immediately. I'm going to be like, Mom, I'm totally not a fuck up. It's fine.
You've got this huge degree. You've written things. You're running a nonprofit organization. You've partnered with and worked with some of the biggest talents in any number of mediums. How do you do it all? Where do you make the time?
Honestly, I started really thinking about this because we don't want to like think about our own makeup. So I try to be in denial about all my life choices. But I randomly was lecturing at a business school, which shouldn't happen, a couple years ago. And this adorable, like, budding entrepreneur was like, Miss Hedlund, what is the secret to your success? And I really thought about it. And I think it's just naivety. Like, I just had no idea how hard anything I was ever going to do was, so I didn't know not to do it. Like, everything I know now about how hard it is to run a nonprofit, if I could download that into 19-year-old Dani's brain, I don't think I would have started this. I mean, I think of how much work this literary tarot has been. When I pitched it to my board, I was like, guys, I bet I can get this done in 6 months for only 10 hours a week. It's been my full-time 60-hour-a-week job for 4 months. And I'm so dumb. Like, I just never learn that things are going to take a lot of time and be really hard. And I've been doing it for nearly 15 years and I still haven't learned. And I think that sort of stupid, blind, overly optimistic passion is the reason that we've been able to accomplish these sort of things at the nonprofit. Is we don't know not to push for it, and then we just double down. So I don't think that's great advice for anyone, but I definitely think it is the sort of secret to our success, which is, it's just stupid, naive bravery to a level of idiocy.
That's fascinating. So what's it like to walk into a maximum security prison?
Oh man, prisons are amazing. We randomly started teaching in prisons years and years ago. I think it was 2015. Randomly, a prison librarian at the max security women's prison in Colorado heard about us somehow, and asked me out for coffee. Was like, hey, Dani, I really like the education programs you're running. Would you think about running Run in Prison? And I had seen exactly one episode of Orange is the New Black, and that was my entire knowledge. And I was like, yeah, totally. See, this is what I'm talking about, this stupid naivety. I was like, we can totally run programs in prison. And then I started doing the research about the low literacy rates and the violence on volunteer rates and the whole sort of shindig. But of course, I didn't back down. I just doubled down. And we started teaching this program that is now expanded internationally. We also teach it in Scotland. But it's this incredible sort of mixture of like live counseling and storytelling and then also education. So we bring in comics as our primary teaching tool because it helps us court low literacy and reluctant readers. But more than anything, it's just really fun. And if I can't get these students to find it fun, not only is it not going to work, they'll get bored and then attack us in class. So we bring in like, you know, the Killing Joke, and we have this incredible conversation about who wears the black hat and the white hat. And then we all break down and realize we all wear the gray hat. And it's so incredible. And these women, through the course of this entire program, write a graphic memoir. So they distill a single turning point in their lives into a small comic. And that is just some of the most raw emotional brilliance I've ever seen. Like I'm a cold-hearted bastard, and I've cried in every single prison course I've ever taught. So, oh God, it's fun and it's amazing. And it's such a good, amazing rush to be able to have that kind of impact, but also engage with people that really have stories.
You don't strike me as cold-hearted, just in general.
Oh, that's very kind of you, but I pride myself on just being a huge dick because I think it's the only way to run a nonprofit. Like normal people will just be like, you know, reject you at every turn. And I'm just like, no, I'm just going to buckle down and keep going.
I guess it's kind of silly to keep saying, but you've also accomplished. But on the other hand, you're also an accomplished writer on top of all this.
Well, that's very kind of you. I mostly just keep not sending in my manuscript to my agent because I'm a terrible person. I'm going to say this as a joke, but I'm really scared to think it might be real. I think I may have started this nonprofit to procrastinate writing a novel. And yeah, because every time we get busy, I'm just like, well, I mean, I know that manuscript's due, but I don't know if I'm going to turn it in. So primarily what I do now is I write for issues for the nonprofit. Like, you know, has there been a terrible terrorist attack from a prisoner in the UK? I'll write an article in the Times. You know, did Neil Gaiman just put out a book that makes me want to cry hysterically because it's brilliant? I'll write a good review. But the last time I wrote something that wasn't for my job, it's been a horrifyingly long time. And I think I'm probably going to have to, you know, cry into a bottle of beer after this interview now that I've realized just how long it's been.
Do you still have the time to read comics today?
Oh, I do. Comics are pretty much one of the only like sanity lifelines I have. So my COO, who's also a workaholic, we do like personal time check-ins where we force each other to like go read a comic. So we like send photos of each other in the bathtub. It's way less scandalous than it sounds, but it's always like the corner of the comic book and then our feet in yoga toes. And it's like evidence that we have a life outside of our jobs. So comics are one of those great things that no matter kind of how stressed I am, I never struggle to get into them. It's kind of this amazing glide into another world. So I read voraciously.
When was the last time a comic book made you cry?
Oh man, I finished East of West over Christmas and I wasn't prepared. Jonathan, you beautiful writer. And I knew it was going to end and I thought I was going to get emotional just over the fact that I couldn't read any more of it. But man, he nailed that ending. Just rocked it.
What are you reading right now?
I'm rereading Monstrous for the billionth time because I'm now one issue behind and I start them over. And Marjorie is just so talented. I don't know how to handle myself. But after that, I'll probably reread Jupiter's Legacy because I got to prepare for the Netflix show. And I feel like if I don't read it, Mark's going to yell at me. But I also I have some really incredible new comics that are just sitting around waiting for me to love them, but I just keep rereading stuff that I adore, which is terrible.
Is there anyone that you can think of that you would consider either the most underrated or most inspiring creator in the industry?
Oh, God, that is such a hard question. I mean, when we talk about the really great comics that we love, I seem like I rarely sort of gravitate towards DC or Marvel because I think creator-owned allows you to do braver things. God, Saga, Monstrous, East of West, Wicked and Divide are all just very top of the list. Like, this is incredible. But there is one comic that I've read recently that no one seems to have read, and I think it is so brilliant. Let me just very quickly Google it so I can remember what it is. Though maybe I'll just rip. God, what is it called? It's got a big God hammer on it. It's a one-off. It's so good. I'll think of it. Man, I am embarrassed that I cannot remember this thing that I so terribly love.
I do the exact same thing. I could like tell you every detail of the story, but I won't remember the title.
I mean, there's a lot of really great things about having an incredible nonprofit staff full of lit geeks. But one of them that I constantly take advantage of is not being able to remember what things are called. Because there's just going to be 50 of the coolest geeks where I'm like, hey guys, here's a song and it kind of goes like this. Or there's a comic with this very large hammer and this grandfather. And they just immediately know. And it's such an abuse of power. And I really appreciate them keeping my brain sharp.
It looks like we're up against the end of the show. Are you ready for the fun part?
Oh yeah, lay it on me.
Sweet. Let's start with an easy one. What's your favorite food?
Can I say fondue? That's so pretentious, but man, I really like playing with my food.
Fondue is amazing. It's cheese. You can't go wrong. All right. So, would you consider yourself a cat or a dog person?
Oh, dog. Definitely.
What's the best swear word?
Oh, I probably can't say it on this podcast.
You totally can.
Oh, I can't. I promised my U.S. board I would stop dropping the C word in any situation. But in my defense, we have an office in Scotland in which it is a term of endearment, and it's tricked me into thinking I can use that word. So my replacement word for the U.S. is fuck, because it's very versatile.
There you go. I think that's the most common answer I get from people.
I mean, it's a really good one. And if we were in Scotland, I'd definitely say the other one, but I've made promises.
Where do you find it? Your place of relaxation, oneness.
Oh, goodness. Probably in the bathtub with my yoga toes.
There you go. What inspires you?
It's cliche, but great stories.
That's a good one. Where do you find joy?
Airport terminals.
Really?
I do love it. It's this sense of adventure. It's as close in the modern day world that we can come to like that amazing scene in Lord of the Rings where everyone's gathered together about to go off on something that's going to change their lives.
So many great adventures happening at once. Yeah, totally. I could see that. Okay, so you're fighting Thanos in a battle that will determine the fate of the universe. You're losing. But Thanos, right before he's able to snap his fingers and erase half of the life in the universe, falls dead of a heart attack. And now you are in possession of the Infinity Gauntlet. You can do anything you want. Bend reality in any way you see fit. What's the first thing you want to do with it?
Oh, gosh, it's such a selfish thing to say, but I clearly want to go back and talk to my dead father, which is so sad and not a fun thing to do, but it would be the absolute first thing where I'd be like, hey, Dad, how's it shaking? Here's what the world's going on. Let's argue about politics. Which is bad. I mean, I should say I'm going to save the world and inevitably bring back all the fallen heroes, but I'm absolutely selfishly going to spend 10 minutes to go back in time and, hang out with my dad.
I don't think that's selfish at all, though. That's reasonable, because you've got the power of infinity. You can do, infinity's there in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I would really like credit for doing something kind of human based instead of immediately being all right, this is time to prank my friends. Because I'm definitely going to prank my friends after I see my dad, and then I'm going to go back to saving the world.
There you go. That is beautiful. So what's next for for Dani Hedlund?
Oh, I guess I'm going to make this tarot deck until my eyes bleed. And then hopefully when COVID starts being, less terrible, I'm going to start teaching in prisons again. Then hopefully I'll immediately get on an airplane and go see my darling COO, who I miss terribly. Hopefully I will actually turn my book in, which would be great. And I'm going to really try to do this like adult thing I've heard of called work-life balance, where I work like less than 80 hours a week. I don't know if I'm going to be very good at it, but I'm going to try to have hobbies and maybe like sleep at night.
I hear good things about this whole work-life balance thing. I'm a little skeptical, Yeah,
it seems really hard. And I also have one of those terrible personalities where if I'm not running, I'm anxious. So I feel like I'm going to have to take up some like extreme hobbies just so I can tone down the crazy.
Nice. Like what?
Ooh, okay. Maybe like base jumping. I really love rock climbing, but maybe I should do it in like scarier places. My COO loves to dive. So maybe, I should just hang out with some manta rays.
That sounds like a ton of fun. Dani, I wanted to thank you for making the time to pop in and talk to me on my humble little podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the really insightful questions. I've been doing a lot of press the last couple weeks, and it's just such a wonderful sort of breath of fresh air when someone asks really insightful, really poignant questions. And the random ones also make me so incredibly happy to not say the same things again. So thanks for a really lovely interview.
This was great. So where can people find you online?
Oh, of course. So the Kickstarter is currently running, and that's just the Literary Tarot on the Kickstarter site. You can learn more about Friction, which is the love of my life other than Helen Mymaris, at frictionlit.org. Just to brag, I just edited Rebecca Roanhorse's comic that's going to go in our new Arcana issue, and it is so good, so definitely check that out. And if you want to learn about really crazy things like going into max security prisons, we're at brinklit.org, and there's just a great testimony from one of our formerly incarcerated students that gives me the feels, and it's great. So you can check that out.
And now it's time to close the show. Imagine it. The lights beginning to come on in an empty theater. People starting to get up from their seats. The smell of popcorn crushed on the floor. And the thought runs through your head that Titular Characters is awesome, and you want to support it. Fear not, my friends, there are tons of ways to do it. You can follow Eva at EvaIsAdorable on Twitter. You can leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, Castbox, or Podcast Addict. And if you're feeling super generous, you can leave some dough at buymeacoffee.com/EvaIsAdorable. There, you can contribute as little as $1. And every bit goes towards paying for production and hosting of this show. How cool is that? Titular Characters is a show about the things we love. It is produced and hosted by the adorable Eva Webb. Opening theme by Antonia Marquis. Closing theme by Mikey Flash of Speed Force Music. The dreamy announcer guy who reads the credits is Donnie Underwood. That's me. Join us next time for another death-defying adventure in cyberspace. See you then!